I've lost my video.
Does it matter that you've got the wrong title on the screen? It's got the 2 o'clock session up. I want to get you guys the right stuff onto YouTube. Okay. Morning, everyone. Morning. Okay. This is a little strange for me because I usually get to introduce predominantly Asterisk people. Michael's been working in open source telecom since the early 2000s, very involved with the Asterisk project, and has been part of the FreeSWITCH project from the beginning, which means he's got to work with some very interesting and colorful characters. So today he's going to tell us a bit about the vision in the future for FreeSWITCH. Take it away.
So this is actually our commit graph going back to 2005 of the FreeSWITCH project playing away. As you can see, there was just a handful of us there at the start. This video is online. It goes through the full history through 2018, and you can see thousands upon thousands of commits, hundreds and hundreds of committers. It's the kind of dynamic project. It's kind of mesmerizing, I know. Let me skip back briefly. All right, so the future FreeSWITCH. Who here knows what FreeSWITCH is? Good. And anyone not know what FreeSWITCH is? Sir, you're going to have to leave. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Wow. So, few key dates. When we originally started FreeSWITCH, the short story is about 5 or 6 of us used to spend almost every afternoon, 3 or 4 hours a day on the phone. This is back in the Asterisk 1.2 days. And we knew we needed something different than what we had. We were trying to host Asterisk past its limits. And we kind of decided it's time to write something that, is designed for the kind of hosting that we're trying to do, the kind of scales we're trying to do. So that was probably 2004, 2005. Summer 2005, we had a lot of ideas, but no code whatsoever. One day, Tony just stopped showing up to the meetings for about a week or two. And he came back out and he's like, hey, check this out. And he tossed me a link to his tar file in his dev box. There was this thing called Choir. And it was a full module loader, and it had an EEX client and a Woomera client. Woomera was a socket controller for some Sangoma cards. And you can make calls between them. Had a full module loader, all these things. Later that year, sometime October of 05, we actually put this software in version control. We had it, basically from the beginning working on Windows as well. And then in January 2006, I went out to a conference called eTel, and we gave the software away. We spent a lot of time talking about license. We ended up with Mozilla Public License. We kind of thought that it was the best balance of a license that you could really use commercially, that we couldn't use against you, kind of use that GPL edge to control people. We wanted people to be able to make their own things, to be able to own them. The commercialization was important to us. As you can see, after that, every 2, 3, 4 years, we've released another major version of FreeSWITCH. I honestly can't even remember what the big features were between one another. FreeSWITCH 1.2 we thought was like the most stable, amazing thing ever, and then we went and tried to build like a real PBX appliance out of it, and that's where FreeSWITCH 1.4 came from. It was definitely a learning experience of what you see when you instead of putting heavy switch kind of load onto it, when you put all these strange call flows. FreeSWITCH 1.6, we added all of the video support, and that was a huge project. Probably 5-10 man years worth of work just to get all these video features in. And FreeSWITCH 1.8, we've added all kinds of additional things, and that's available to our FSA customers now. So where are we now? The environment recently is we see all of these huge companies, and these are just a few companies that I've found public references to. I'm not under NDA because they've posted publicly or something. I've seen bug reports or mailing list emails from. But dozens and dozens of these huge companies are out there using FreeSWITCH. And when we were finally going full-time 100% on the FreeSWITCH project with no kind of corporate benefactors, what we found is there were some people that were contributing, but by and large, these companies, many of these companies were not really giving back, not giving back anything, no communication, maybe a bug reporting and expectation, but nothing back to the community. At the same time, we've seen the install base of FreeSWITCH getting huge, just the activity going up. And with the addition of all the video and the WebRTC features, the actual code complexity and the amount of changes we have to do, particularly with WebRTC, just continues to grow and grow and grow. So that's kind of the space we're in right now. Led us to some problems. The contributions, they've just steadily decreased over time. I think when we went into building FreeSWITCH, we had this lofty goal of making telephony boring. And at least for us, it certainly did become boring. I remember days probably in the early to mid 2000s hanging out with Neil Stratford, talking about amazing things and how amazing it is that we made this work. And you look at that time fondly because they were really interesting things. These features are just boring now. It's like, yeah, you can make audio calls and you don't have to pay someone a lot of money, and that's kind of cool. But with the lack of excitement, you get a little bit of a lack of engagement with the community and them not giving back quite so much. So that's been a challenge. Another problem, maintenance. So as we've done these huge pushes for features over the years, with additional complex code that's talking to other complex code, that also changes a lot. You just have a lot of churn and fixes to do. Particularly WebRTC, the browsers are pushing out releases on a fairly regular basis. They are changing what WebRTC is on a monthly basis. And it just requires a lot more keeping up with. Customer demands. Customers, paying and open source users have all demanded more and more expectation of rock hard stability. And with the growing install base, there's just so much more of it. We were 3 guys trying to handle all these. That one's sustainable. Keyman. So one of the complaints that we've gotten privately, but clearly over the years, is Anthony is kind of our keyman, and if the keyman gets hit by a bus, what's the risk of the project? So we've been struggling with that for many years. We've always been a small team, and that's always been a serious risk for FreeSWITCH. Funding. In the past, we've had companies that have employed us and had us do other things, but primarily we were there working on FreeSWITCH, and we left those behind and just ran off with, we're going to do this 100% and just work on FreeSWITCH. So Where's our money going to come from? We all have bills. It became a real problem. In time, with all of the demands, the increasing maintenance, all of that, we just didn't have enough time in the day. We were typically working 12 to 18 hours a day, and it just wasn't sustainable. So we made some changes. What are we changing? Staffing. So in the last year or so, we've roughly tripled our team. We did a bunch of things to get there, but we've expanded all of our teams, and these are to address some of these problems. So tripled our team, our support team. Instead of the good old days where Tony and me and Brian would just answer your support request and would jump right in, which as it turns out is not particularly efficient because I'm not a great guy to patiently walk through all of the steps together, debug data and that sort of thing, but I'm pretty good at debugging it once I have it. We built a support team who's really good at keeping track of what your issues are, who has open issues, all of that, and can walk customers through all of the problems. And that team is growing every day. On the development side, particularly with the keyman issue, we have been slowly finding strong developers to join the core FreeSWITCH team. And mostly out of the community, people that we found who have strong coding abilities, adding them to our team. And where it used to be me or Tony would, for a custom code project, it would just be one of us, and we would get as backlogged as we would. And sometimes someone wanted something, it might take 6 months or a year. Now we have a much larger team, and we're growing the experience. We have much less of a keyman issue than we used to. Lots of different people are working on different things. Big difference. And a huge difference, sales team. We never had salespeople. So all of those years, the 10 or so years, we had never hired a salesperson. So what had happened was we were so overtaxed that we would adjust our workload by way of not responding to sales requests that we couldn't immediately see had good value for us. It didn't really work great for us, kind of left a lot of things on the table as far as opportunities for us. And it also left people using FreeSWITCH feeling like they maybe didn't have the kind of support that they needed when they needed it. Tracking. So we're actually we've gone through a couple different tracking systems for properly tracking our sales and support data. But we're moving into Salesforce territory now, and getting our sales and our support teams fully up to speed on that, knowledge base, all of those systems. And we're getting much better metrics out of our team, so a good set of tools for as we grow. You look like you have a question. No? You're just interested.
Sitting next to me.
Oh, good morning. FSA program pricing, I think Tim's in the room. Tim was asking me a question yesterday about how big do we want this to grow, and what I said to him is, our support team, we can only grow so fast because it just takes you time to get people up to speed great. So we've set our pricing in such a way that we're going to continue to grow and grow healthily, but grow at a pace where we can get new support people and new development people up to speed in such a way where they're fully utilized and competent, and not just try to throw as many bodies at the process. So we have set our pricing maybe on the higher side, intentionally to inhibit our growth a little bit on the support side so that we can train people properly. FSA early access. So FSA is the FreeSWITCH Advantage, and the structuring that we changed here was a large chunk of the new features are going just into an early access program for the FreeSWITCH Advantage customers. And that allows us to kind of flesh out features a little bit better and to add real value that goes with the increased pricing on FSA, so that they get roughly 18 to 24 months early access. So if someone's looking for a real competitive advantage on cutting-edge video features or our cutting-edge real-time text features, they can get into the FSA program. That gives them access to the new code and access to our support team at the same time. Gives a real competitive advantage, gives a reason for people to come to us for support, as opposed to just saying, well, your stuff's too stable, we don't really need support. So we did change our release approach a little bit there to make that happen. And infrastructure, so on infrastructure, adding all of these people, adding all of these new branches, all of these kind of complex pieces to manage. We've added a ton of build nodes, built out a new data center, just to have developers have the hardware resources they've needed for testing, for build nodes, development, et cetera. It's actually been a huge job getting them all the pieces they needed. New and continuing challenges. Increasing requirements. So the funny thing happened is it turns out when you add a sales team to a previously non-existent sales process, you close a lot more sales deals. So what we ended up having is a huge increase in our support customer base in a fairly short period of time, as our sales team went through all of our old leads and started calling people and finding out that people we, at a skim of an email, maybe didn't think were a good match, were actually an excellent match for our program. All of a sudden we had all these new customers. So that becomes a new problem, right? Along with that, time, even as we're adding members to the team, we have growing customer base. They have more and more interesting problems because of the pricing. These are some of the larger companies. Our time isn't getting any better yet. We're not quite staffed up to the point where we have lots of free time to do whatever we want. And that's left us with a little bit of a challenge of resources for open source. Part of my job is supposed to be going through all of your bug reports and things like that. And I've been so overwhelmed the last few months that I have not looked at a new bug report in over 3 months right now. So the customer issues are coming first, and there's just not enough hours in the day. So those are kind of ongoing challenges. So we've added all these people, we've changed around the way we do things. What's the results? So the FreeSWITCH ecosystem probably didn't look like it massively changed from the outside, but the way we handle things on the inside changed significantly. For example, we have significantly more coding resources. So it's produced a bunch of new code. For the FSA branches, we have pretty major differences in performance and stability. There's mostly in the video area, the kind of things, we heavily dog food our things. So we've kind of had an ongoing issue with recording to YouTube. YouTube's particularly persnickety about exactly what stream you send to it. We made huge improvements on that for our ClueCon Weekly video blog. So the video quality and recording. We've added real-time text support, and that's the RTT and the MSRP, sorry, all the acronyms, support that is in FreeSWITCH 1.8. We have FreeSWITCH 1.8 working properly on Debian Stretch. It does require not just the FreeSWITCH code, but a whole bunch of base system tweaks. Debian Stretch did some very strange things with libraries and kind of halfway upgrading libraries, and did require rebuilding a number of things. if you're trying to use Stretch in the open source, I would caution against it. There's a bunch of kind of silent pitfalls that will bite you in the future. We have done and are in process of doing pretty significant changes on the Windows build system. We got about 85% of the missing modules into the Windows build system, into the MSI, and we completely changed the way that we do the Windows build. There's no, in Windows, there's no packaging libraries that you can build against. There's no apt or something like that. So we put together a way to use precompiled libraries in our build process, and it has significantly improved compile times, but you still get all of the benefits of using Windows Debugger, which I know a lot of people love. So that's in there, that's still kind of improving, and also the installer. And actually not in tree yet, but about to be merged in the next couple weeks. We've been working hard on a red UOP FEC implementation. This is the forward error correction for video that you can do with Chrome. That one's been a real challenge. The adherence to specs on the browser side have been on the poor to make-believe kind of range on that feature. So it's been a lot of digging to understand what we need to do to interop with the browsers. We probably have 2 to 3 months into that feature so far. What else is new? So we have all these new developers, so we wrote a bunch of new stuff. So I guess we'll start from the bottom. FS Blue, we released a product which is essentially FreeSWITCH as a virtual host. We have people reaching out to us all the time saying, you know, what kind of box do I need for FreeSWITCH? Can I put it in the cloud? What exactly do I need? Can you just get it set up for me? So we released FreeSWITCH as a virtual instance kind of product where we'll host it in our data center for you. Then we'll deal with monitoring and all of that. You have your instance there. So that's a new opportunity. More interesting to me is the new modules. We got really into which different services we can interface with. We were talking on the panel yesterday about the future is in not your traditional phone call. It's in the way that you tie different things together in interesting ways. So we want to give people more access to integrate with all of these amazing tools that are coming out in different ways. So Amazon has a text-to-speech service called Polly. We have a module, excuse me, for Amazon Polly, talks directly to Amazon on that. Works just like our other text-to-speech modules do inside of FreeSWITCH, except it talks to Amazon's Polly service. And then Mod Watson is a similar text-to-speech service that talks to the IBM Watson service. Mod G Cloud's the most interesting one. Has anyone heard of Google Dialogflow? Yeah. So earlier this year, late last year, Google reached out to us. They were really struggling to kind of get some good uptake on this because there was no good way to connect Google Dialogflow to traditional phone systems. And they really want to, they've got it kind of engaged in their phones and browsers, but they knew that this kind of conversational stuff was still, had a huge market to be tied to someone calling on the phone. They asked us if we could help, and this was on a Tuesday, I believe. We were in Orlando for IT Expo, and Tony said, sure, yeah, let's see what we can do. And on that Thursday, they had a follow-up call where Tony had a working model put together of us bridging calls through to Google Dialogflow. And then it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, we had the full solid C implementation functional and up and running. This module lets you talk to Google's speech recognition, text-to-speech, and their dialog flow service. I think it's pretty cool. I'd like to show you. Let me pull it up. Hold on. Let me figure out how to get it up on the screen. There we go. So, I'm doing this backwards. I'm going to try to do this on my cell phone and see how it works.
Hello, welcome to the Dialog Flow Signal Wire Room Reservation Demo. I can help you reserve a room, just ask.
Hold on a second. This has been on my gone to sleep laptop. I don't think it's connected.
Hello, welcome to the Dialog Flow Signal Wire Room Reservation Demo. I can help you reserve a room, just ask.
Reserve a room?
I can help with that. Where would you like to reserve a room?
Chicago, Illinois.
What date?
July 23rd, 2018.
What time will the meeting start?
9 a.m.
How long will it last?
4 days.
Thanks. How many people are attending?
300.
What size room do you need? Small, medium, or large?
Large.
Okay, here are the meeting details. Date the 23rd of July 2018. Time 9 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds. Duration 4 day. Guests 300. Location Chicago, Illinois. Room size large. Thanks for using Dialog Flow and Signal Wire.
So there's kind of some of the new kinds of technologies we're trying to bridge together. Let me start my slides back up. Sorry about that. Get back over here. Beautiful. So those are the kind of new technologies we've gotten a pretty close relationship with Google out of this. Tony presented with their Dialog Flow team at Speech Tech earlier last month, I believe. And we're getting pretty excited to start rolling these services out to some big customers coming up soon. So all of these things are available as commercial modules right now. So as I was talking earlier, as we built our development team, one of the things we've finally been able to do is focus real time and just getting creative and saying, you know, like Tony did with the Google guys, yeah, we can just write that. We used to do this all the time in the past. We have a long history of April Fool's joke modules that are actually functional but strangely amusing. We kind of lost that for a while because we were too busy, and we're back to being able to be creative and make new things. Does anyone have any questions about kind of the place we're going and the new way we're doing things, or FreeSWITCH in general? Shoot. The microphone.
Get ready for the feedback. I'm the speaker, not so, with the FSA thing and the early access program, how are you doing that exactly in terms of like the versions? Because so are those early access members getting like you release version 1.10 and then they get earlier access to 1.10, or do you have a separate branch? Because like obviously the open source community is involved in pre-release testing. So
yes,
they can't really
absolutely
be involved in pre-release testing because then you're giving them the early access. So
yeah,
how are you doing that?
So it's a little bit complicated. So open source contributions are continuing to go into the master branch in the main FreeSWITCH repo. The things that we're doing just for early access are going into a kind of companion branch in another repo, which is available only to open source, only to the FSA customers. So we do have some customers that need to be so bleeding edge that they go on our pre-release branch as well on the FSA side. So the versioning is, the FSA branch is the 1.8 working branch essentially, and there's a 1.8 release branch that's in that repository. And all the public contributions go into master, they also pull back into that. And then for 1.6 in the public repo, there's a 1.6 repo. There's also master. I'm going much slower on 1.6 just because of resources at this point, but also just because it's been pretty stable for people, so I'm being really selective on what we put in there. I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to actually put up for a vote what do you guys want to see in 1.6 and kind of pick the things that are least likely to affect stability and to improve stuff. So there'll still be a bug flow that way, and some bug flow out of the FSA branch down into that as well. But the all the new features will stay in FSA until we do the release there, at which point we'll merge that down into the public master branch, and from there branch off to do releases. So the main thing is that other repo for FSA customers continues to get a huge chunk of patches from our staff. All of the publicly contributed stuff continues to go into master.
But you do then have a smaller pool of testers?
We do have a smaller pool of testers, which is a trade-off. It is a smaller pool of testers, but by the nature of FSA and the pricing, it tends to be a much more abusive group of testers. And also they're testers that we have the support resources to be directly on problems. So we tend to have tighter feedback loops on those guys. So certainly by the time it gets to back to the open source side, it's going to be even more stable than our previous releases tended to be with open source testing, by a combination of the time and the fact that all of that testing was done with significant support resources, and the level of abuse that a number of our FSA customers do. Guys running 5,000-6,000 seat call centers and doing very strange applications with weird call flows. We definitely flesh out the bugs. And the guys that are on this program tend to be the ones that were filing the most frequent and interesting bugs prior on the open source side. So I'm not too concerned that we're going to have a deficit on there, and there'll still be a kind of a bleed out period in the open source side when those releases come through.
Any other questions? Okay.
Hello, big FreeSWITCH users here, and thank you a lot for your work. Yep. We are kind of on the fence because we are also big open source users and fans, and I think the main issue is here. We are happy that FreeSWITCH is going in a way that it can be sustainable in the future, and that's very important for you and for your users as well. But also we get the feeling that with version 1.8 and that we are expecting that version for the last 3 years now, something like that. And do you see it coming out in the future, in the near future, for open source, or you will keep it on the paid side for some time now?
1.8 specifically?
Yeah.
We're looking about a year and a half to 2 years maybe. We're going to have to feel exactly where that line is, but there's definitely a big set of features that we are working on now that need to get fleshed out and fully run through that pre-release cycle before we do it.
Okay.
So it certainly won't be this year at ClueCon. We're looking at about a year and a half.
But you're using it in production already in FSA customers, or no?
The portions that are released, yeah. I'm saying that there's some additional features that will go into that before it gets back to public.
The FSA program, do you see it working?
Is it you or me?
No, I think it's you, yeah. Do you see it working in another way where companies can contribute with resources, with code, with programmers to hunt bugs, or you're looking just for a paid program? What is your opinion?
I don't see that the FSA program would change like that, but there's absolutely engagement we've had with people who have significant contributions in other sorts of arrangements that we've made. So, I mean, we do have quite a lot of flexibility. There's still plenty of opportunity for open source engagement. In fact, we desperately need more open source engagement because my time's so pressed right now. The bugs, like there's no one out there looking at bugs and validating if they're even real or just a new user with a silly configuration question. And we've tried engaging the community on that, and it's just not working. So there's certainly plenty of opportunity on the open source side, and I'm happy to work with anyone who wants to do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. Anybody?
What time is lunch?
Randy, thanks.
We'll get to the warnings about don't drink before dinner and stuff later.
Michael, have you read Eric Klein's new book? It's called The One. Because I think you should probably check that out if you like science fiction. But, it's amazing.
As it turns out, they have me writing code all the time, and they don't let me read anymore.
No, I didn't pay him for the shameless plug.
But you will.
For years to come.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We have a few-minute break.